Welcome back from that short commercial break, and at this very time, we're heading into the press review as we go through the print media to see what's making headlines, most especially in the world of business. And of course, with me, I am going to start with the New Vision right here, and we check out what's really making headlines into the government, into the world of business. Sorry, and. With the New Vision here, I'm seeing the government supports sweet potato farmers. Sweet potato farmers are being supported by the government. And according to the report here, the farmers will soon realize value for money for their efforts following the launch of the sweet potato value chain development project. The 6-month project seeks to develop different products from the sweet potatoes with wheat substitution as the major goal, but also help farmers earn more from sweet potatoes. Of course, the initiative will also increase production, and that's in addition to creating jobs along the value chain. As I wind up this, it says the project is supported by the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation through the Consortium of Changing University Responsiveness to Agri-Business Development, that's in Uganda. And that's regarding that particular report there. And here we see, still in the New Vision, public universities funding to change. Yeah, very interesting, public universities. And of course, when I have a look at here at the money that has been allocated, okay, but let's have a brief review on the report before we get into the money that has been allocated. That's to the different universities right there. Public universities and higher institutions of learning have always accessed funds just from government for their operations. However, the mode of accessing fund could soon, of course, change regarding this particular report. In a new model for public universities and institutions that was approved. Under the block funding model, higher education institutions, that's including those other, actually it says here, according to the plan, institutions with high research output and enrollment, of course, will get more funding. That's in addition with the universities with a big number of staff and high academic qualifications, which will attract that's more funding. The proposal is part of the draft of the National Higher Education Policy Development by the Education Ministry. Yes, and that's regarding that. And of course, when I go through here, there has been, that put quite the allocation. Of course, remember, the funding has changed, so that means there is a decrease or an increment regarding a particular university as compared to the previous funding that was taking place right there. And now let me put the New Vision aside and cross over to the Daily Monitor, and we see what's transpiring right there into the area, into the world of business in particular. And of course, I see the government rules out lockdown. That's for Mubende over Ebola, as the government has ruled out the possibility of imposing a lockdown. That's on Mubende district, the epicenter of the Ebola Sudan strain. Of course, opting for strict adherence health guidelines of both public and private facilities. So that's what is regarding into that particular area. And of course, as I go more here, still looking at the business, as government bans steel timber housing building method. Of course, this has been banned. The government has banned the use of the steel timber concrete, that's composite building method in Uganda, citing structural safety risks. In multiple interviews, of course, engineers welcome the decision, which they said many developers actually prefer. Developers prefer because it is relatively cheaper compared for instance, of steel concrete composite technique. So you can see how regarding that is also really into the world of construction, and that's what is making headlines. And to wind this up, as we are getting ready for the international news, because I think as I speak, I've just received the updates regarding the internationals. So we're about to go there briefly just after here. Okay, of course, regulate. Here we see there is a suggestion of regulating the use of chemicals in agriculture. That's the civil society organizations telling the government. Of course, large quantities of banned agrochemicals, including pesticides, are still in use. An analysis conducted by the combined team of the concerned civil society organizations, researchers, and agriculture sector experts have come out to reveal. And that's it still with the Daily Monitor. And now we wind this up, and now let's get straight to the international news. With Japan, as Japan to lift restrictions that's on foreign tourists. According to the report, Japan will open its doors back up to foreign tourists after more than 2 years of closed borders. That's due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Tourists will be able to visit the country without a visa and will no longer need to go through what we call a travel agency. That's from October 11th. A cap of daily arrivals will also be lifted. Japanese announcement comes at around the same time, and Taiwan and Hong Kong also relaxed entry rules for the visitors. Taiwan will drop quarantine requirements, that's for international arrivals, by mid-October, while Hong Kong, that's on Friday, said it would move from the hotel quarantine to stay-at-home requirements from 26th of September. For Japan, the anticipated influx of travelers will be a welcome boost to government and local businesses, and comes as the Japanese yen has slid to its lowest point against the US dollar in the last 6 months. The country has allowed visitors since June, but they had to be part of the tours. Mr. Kishida also announced a domestic travel incentive, a scheme that will give discounts on travel, theme park prices, sporting events, and concerts. Japanese residents and citizens will be eligible for an 11,000 yen subsidy. That's of course equivalent to about 69 pounds, or you can say it can be $77 US subsidy. Similar programs have been introduced in other countries, reopenings to encourage locals to spend and stimulate, and of course, the economy. However, like elsewhere, the rise in the cost of living has been a dominant that's concern for the locals. The world's largest economy was one of the last Asian powerhouses to keep its borders, of course, closed due to the COVID health concerns. Its death rate is the lowest among the world's wealthiest nations, while the country's vaccination rate is among the highest. Japan also never mandated lockdowns or mask wearing, but many locals rapidly adapted the protections. Of course, as we wind up, Japan saw nearly 32 million foreigners visit. That's in 2019. As the last year prior to the pandemic, and the restrictions on travelers in the recent months had preluded that's quite many foreigners from visiting, according to what the reports have revealed. Okay, and now let's cross over to Tanzania, see what's making headlines in the world of business right there, as Tanzania plans to buy a cargo aircraft, something very remarkable. The government is said to purchase a new special cargo aircraft, of course, with plans to use the Kilimanjaro International Airport as a strategic port. That's for cargo landing. According to the Deputy Minister for Work and Transport, Mr. Atupele Mwakibete, here he plans are aligned for the special cargo aircraft. That's the Boeing 767 300F to arrive in the country in June 2023 to boost the cargo business. Mwai Kibete was responding to a question asked by the Parliament, of course, by high lawmaker, that's Shisha Mafue, who wanted to know why the government has not yet declared the KIA as a special report to boost the country's agri-business by allowing cargo aircraft to land and take off without paying fees. Okay, in his answer, Mr. Mwai Kibete said in efforts to attract cargo business, the government has already reviewed landing fees for all cargo aircrafts as it had been proposed by the High Representative. Currently, in his statement, he said, we don't have a special cargo aircraft which have specific schedules to land at Kilimanjaro International Airport. That's according to that statement, he said. He, however, insisted that cargo that is coming from Kilimanjaro International Airport was being transported by passenger aircraft. Okay, and now let's wind up the international news as we head to Kenya. And this time around, we are looking at the Kenya National Security Fund. Of course, Kenya NSSF interest on savings hits 7-year high as income triples. Okay, according to the report, returns on monthly contributions made by the National Social Security Fund have beaten the inflation after the state-run pension scheme paid the biggest interest on the retirement savings in 9 years. The fund paid an interest of 10% of the year to June last year, up from that was 7% in a similar period a year earlier, on the back of 237% rise in net investment income. That's to 32.3 billion Kenyan shillings. This is the highest return since 2014, when it was paid 12.5%. The increase in the net investment income was aided by dividends from the farms where the fund has stakes, trading of shares and bonds at the Nairobi securities. The exchange rate, of course, the Nairobi Securities Exchange, that's according to that particular report. The 10% interest means that the NSSF returns managed to beat the average inflation of 5.34%. That's for the period. The NSSF put 152.9 billion in government bonds, yet up from 124.2 billion last year, while the value of quoted securities jumped to 52.5 billion shillings to 66.6 billion Kenyan shillings. Okay, as I continue still, the fund cut exposure to call and fixed deposits from 15.6 billion to 8.3 billion Kenyan shillings. It reversed a 10.1 billion loss in the market value of assets in the year of June 2020 and reported 11.5 billion, again boosting the return on investment. Its investments in companies listed, of course, on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, such as KCB, Barclays, that's KCB Bank, Barclays, BAT, Safaricom, increased by 14.1 billion shillings, of course, to 66.6 billion, allowing the fund to benefit from a healthy flow of dividends. The fund has also sold and bought new shares, that's allowing it to book capital gains as investments. Lastly, the latest financial statements show the fund's expenses jumped, that's 17.8%, or the equivalent of 961 million Kenyan shillings to 6.36 billion in the period, against 5.4 billion shillings that was in the year 2020. And that's it for Kenya, which winds up the international updates regarding the world of business. And right now, let's cross over to the business quotes and tips. But firstly, let's review the business tip of the day. Yes, talking about the business tip of the day, it says understand what motivates your customers to buy. Invest in time, learn, invest time to learn what motivates your customers. Take the time, to know their needs, challenges, concerns, and fears. Serve them fast, and your interests will be served in time. I guess this is something that we always talk about. Of course, if you're really an entrepreneur into the world of business, realize that actually you have to pay attention to your customers, understand what they want, understand what they need, take time to study. Like in business, before you actually move out there to sell, there is what we call the feasibility study, which you put a product on market, you don't sell it, you give it out for free and actually see what the consumers think about the product. They will tell you what can you improve, what can you add, what can you remove, to make the product very perfect. That shows that actually you care about your customers, and once you do what they want, definitely they all support you. And that's it for the business tip of the day. And now let's wind this up with the business quote of the day. The business quote of the day, that's from Samuel Beckett. This is an Irish avant-garde novelist and playwright. He says, ever failed, no matter, try again. Actually, no, if I start from where it started from above, ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail again. Of course, fail better. Of course, majority of us don't want to hear anything, the aspect called failure, but that's part of the daily life. If you've really studied the person that invented the bulb, they tried quite a lot of experiments, not until lastly, there are more than 500 experiments, not until lastly we see the lights today we're using on our streets on a daily basis. Even where I am right here in the studio, there are lights flashing on me, but there was an idea by somebody who failed quite a number of times, that he failed better and he succeeded at that. And that's it. It's exactly just 2 minutes to the top of the hour of 8. But of course, don't forget channel 394 on GoTV and channel 372 at DSTV, inclusive of our social media platforms. That's Smart24 TV Live on YouTube, at Smart24 TV Twitter, and Smart24 TV, that's on Facebook. Let's get into a short commercial break. We return with the Coffee Court. Good morning.